It happened on a Sunday afternoon, the kind of quiet day where the neighborhood usually hummed with lawnmowers and kids riding bikes, not chaos. I was in my driveway washing my hands after finishing some work on my garage when a scream shattered the stillness. There it is. That's my car. He stole my car. The voice was shrill, piercing, impossible to ignore. My heart skipped as I turned to see Karen barreling down the street, her massive figure quaking with every step, her face red, sweat glistening under the summer sun. Behind her trailed two of her friends from the HOA board, their faces twisted with smugness, like backup singers in a play she directed. I followed her pointing finger and felt the blood drain from my face. She was accusing me of stealing her vehicle, a cherry red SUV I had never touched in my life. But she wasn't pointing at the SUV. She was pointing at my car, a vintage Pontiac Firebird that I had restored with my father over the course of 3 years. My pulse hammered in my ears. That's mine, Karen, I said, trying to keep my voice even. But she wouldn't let me speak. Her shriek grew louder. No, that's the car that went missing last week. You stripped it, painted it, and now you're hiding it on your driveway. I knew you were shady. I'm calling the police right now. Neighbors poured out of their houses, drawn by her hysteria. Some pulled out phones, others whispered in disbelief. Karen already had her phone to her ear, her words carrying like venom. Yes, officer, I found my stolen car. It's right here in my neighbor's driveway. I need you to come immediately. The thief is still here, and I don't feel safe. My hands curled into fists, my mind racing. This wasn't just embarrassment. This was a false accusation that could ruin me. Minutes later, the flashing red and blue lit up our cul-de-sac. 2 squad cars pulled in, officers stepping out tense, eyes scanning. Karen rushed forward, tears streaming down her round cheeks, her voice breaking with false fragility. That's him. That's the man who stole my SUV. She pointed at me with dramatic flair. He's been hiding it, repainting it, probably selling off the parts. Arrest him before he gets away. One officer held up a hand to calm her, the other turned to me. Sir, can you explain why this woman believes that vehicle belongs to her? My throat felt tight, but I forced myself to breathe. Because she's lying, I said, my voice steady though my heart pounded. That Firebird has been mine for years. Registered, insured, every part accounted for. And I can prove it. Karen barked a laugh, her arms flailing. Prove it. Please. He can say whatever he wants. But I have the title to a red vehicle that matches this. Don't let him trick you. Her arrogance stung, but my resolve hardened. I gestured toward my garage, its heavy door shut. The crowd leaned forward, tension thick in the summer air. Officers, if you'll come with me, I said, walking toward the keypad. Everything she claims will fall apart in the next 10 seconds. I punched in the code, and with a rumble, the garage door began to rise. The sound echoed like a drum roll in the silence. And there, under the dim light, sat Karen's real SUV cherry red, untouched, and parked exactly where it had been towed a week earlier. The crowd gasped. Karen's jaw dropped, so wide I thought it might never close. Her eyes bulged, her whole body wobbling with shock. The SUV had been impounded by city order for unpaid tickets, and the towing company had stored it in my garage temporarily because I worked part-time restoring vehicles. The paperwork sat on the hood, neatly filed, with her name on every fine. I turned to the officers, my voice sharp but calm. This is her SUV. Mine is outside. She knew it was impounded. She knew it was here. And instead of facing her debts, she tried to frame me for theft. A stunned silence fell before neighbors erupted into whispers and exclamations. One officer bent over the paperwork, nodding slowly. It checks out, he said, holding up the folder. This is official city tow documentation. Sir, your Firebird is registered to you. And ma'am, he turned to Karen, his eyes hard. You knowingly filed a false police report. That is a crime. Karen's composure crumbled instantly. No, I don't understand. I thought was hiding it. I thought, but her words tangled in her throat, turning into whimpers. The officers stepped toward her, their hands calm but firm. Ma'am, you're under arrest for filing a false report and harassment. You have the right to remain silent. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the cuffs clicked around her wrists. Karen's shrieks split the air, her body thrashing as they led her toward the squad car. No, you can't do this. I'm the HOA president. I make the rules here. This whole neighborhood belongs to me. Her words sounded pathetic now, hollow echoes of a power she never truly held. The crowd didn't jerky applaud it. Applauded the truth, applauded justice, applauded the end of a tyrant who had terrorized them for years. And just when it seemed over, another twist came. One of the officers turned to the SUV, flipping through the paperwork. "These unpaid tickets aren't just for parking violations," he said. "They're linked to city code violations, unpaid HOA fees, and even a fraud report under her name. Looks like this isn't the first time she's played games with property." The neighbors gasped again, the puzzle pieces falling into place. Karen hadn't just been an overbearing HOA president, she had been embezzling funds, abusing power, and covering her tracks with lies. Now every one of those lies was unraveling in real time, exposed in front of the very people she once ruled. The scene in the cul-de-sac that night felt like a movie, only this wasn't scripted justice, it was real. Karen's shrill voice faded as the officers loaded her into the squad car, her protests drowned out by the buzz of neighbors whispering and recording. Her face, once smug with power, was pressed against the window, pale and streaked with sweat. The very image of a tyrant undone by her own arrogance. For years she had barked at us through HOA meetings, fined families for trivial things, and strutted as if the neighborhood was her personal kingdom. Now she sat in handcuffs, her empire crumbling in the glow of police lights. But her downfall didn't end in the street. The next morning, the story spread like wildfire. The local paper ran the headline, "HOA president arrested after false car theft claim backfires." Videos hit social media, neighbors cheering as the garage opened, Karen's jaw dropping in disbelief the moment officers snapped cuffs around her wrists. Within hours, the footage went viral, shared with captions like, entitled "HOA president gets caught in her own lie, and this is what happens when power goes unchecked." By midweek, our quiet neighborhood was swarming with reporters. Microphones, cameras, vans parked on the street. For once, Karen wasn't the one dictating the narrative, she was the cautionary tale. One neighbor, Mrs. Lopez, told a reporter, "She fined me $200 for hanging laundry. She made my daughter cry over chalk drawings on the sidewalk. She thought she was untouchable. Now look at her." Others added their stories, each one stacking higher like bricks in the case against her. 2 weeks later, the courthouse was standing room only. I sat with my neighbors, the weight of years of frustration pressed into that one chamber. Karen shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, her hair disheveled, her confidence gone. She looked smaller somehow, deflated, but her eyes still darted around with the feral desperation of someone who couldn't accept that her reign was over. The prosecutor laid it out with brutal clarity. False police reports, harassment, fraud, embezzlement of HOA funds. But the bombshell came when investigators revealed she had been colluding with a shady developer. Her plan had been to push families out with bogus fines and fabricated violations, making them desperate enough to sell their homes at a loss. Then she and her partner would buy the properties cheap and flip them for profit. The Firebird accusation had been just another attempt to destroy someone who dared resist her. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Karen's lawyer tried to argue she was misguided, not malicious, but the evidence was overwhelming: bank records, emails, recordings of her bragging to her co-conspirator. "They'll fold like cards if you hit them with enough fines," she'd said in one damning tape. When it was my turn to speak, I stood and told the story of that day. I described the accusations, the garage door opening, the truth spilling out like sunlight on a storm. My voice shook, not from fear, but from the memory of years we had all spent living under her tyranny. She thought she could weaponize the law against me, I said, but the law is not her toy. It belongs to all of us. And it should protect us, not punish us for her greed. Karen leapt from her chair, her voice shrill and cracked. "They're all liars. Every last one of them. I was protecting this neighborhood. I was keeping order." The judge banged the gavel, silencing her. "Mrs. Whitmore, sit down. You've lost the right to speak over these people." The verdict came swiftly. Guilty on all charges: fraud, harassment, embezzlement, filing false reports. The sentence: 5 years in prison, restitution to every family she had wronged, and a lifetime ban from serving on any HOA board or community organization. The gavel fell with finality, and the courtroom erupted not in cruelty, but in applause, relief rolling through the room like a wave. Karen sank back into her chair, her empire gone, her voice silenced. Afterward, the neighborhood changed almost overnight. The HOA dissolved completely, its accounts audited and funds redistributed fairly. In its place, we created a community council where decisions were made openly, by vote, with every resident having a voice. The fear that had clung to our streets evaporated. Lawns bloomed with color again, flowers, gardens, even quirky decorations once banned under Karen's standards. Kids rode bikes without fear of fines. Neighbors laughed together instead of whispering in fear. One Saturday evening, as the sun dipped low, the whole community gathered in my driveway. My Firebird sat polished and gleaming, not as a symbol of division, but as a reminder of what we had stood for. Someone set up tables of food, others brought guitars, and laughter spilled across the cul-de-sac where once only Karen's bark had ruled. Chief Harlow, who had stood by us throughout the ordeal, raised a glass. To truth, he said, his voice carrying over the crowd. To neighbors who don't just live side by side, but stand side by side. And to never letting tyranny take root in our streets again. The cheer that followed shook something inside me. We weren't just survivors of Karen's reign, you were stronger because of it. I looked around at my neighbors' faces lit with joy, children splashing in sprinklers, music floating into the night, and felt a surge of pride. Karen thought she could crush us with lies, but in the end, her collapse united us. She lost everything, and we gained something priceless: trust, unity, and freedom. And maybe that's the real lesson. No matter how loud or entitled someone is, truth roars louder. Lies might control for a time, but eventually, they collapse under their own weight. So here's my question for you. When someone like Karen twists rules and turns lies into weapons, what's the right response? Silence, or standing together to fight back? I know where we stood. Where would you?